Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Don Ma in for Tiffany. Our top story. The results are in for the world's first election of 2024. In Taiwan, voters choose their next leader, exactly the man the Chinese Communist Party doesn't want.
Between democracy and authoritarianism, we will stand on the side of democracy. Taiwan will continue to walk side by side with democracies from around the world.
How will the Chinese regime respond to Taiwan's choice? And amid the rising risk of an invasion, how can the U.S. glean insight from Taiwan's road to 2024? An expert breaks it down. A major setback for China's communist regime, Taiwan's vice president upgrades to president-elect, defeating an opposition party that favors close engagement with China. The outcome destined to shape future Taiwan-China relations for the next 4 years. But who is William Lai? And with more than 60 elections scheduled around the world, 2024's unprecedented election year just kicked off and is set to end with the U.S. vote in November. What can the U.S. learn from Taiwan? Taiwan just elected a new president, exactly the man its communist neighbor doesn't want in power. William Lai's win makes the first election of the year a triumph against the totalitarian regime in Beijing, and also marks an unprecedented third consecutive term for Lai's party, the DPP. In his victory speech, Lai reiterated Taiwan's direction, expressing determination to uphold democracy and freedom on the island, even under threats from the Chinese Communist Party, and that Taiwan is not a bargaining chip between the United States and China.
Taiwan just chose the man that will shape his relations with China and the U.S. for the next 4 years, William Lai. In his victory speech, Lai thanked Taiwan's 23 million people.
Between democracy and authoritarianism, we will stand on the side of democracy. The Republic of China, Taiwan will continue to walk side by side with democracies from around the world.
Worth noting, Beijing did not favor Lai to win. China has framed the election as Taiwan's choice between peace and war, and the regime has said Lai would bring Taiwan closer to war. The communist regime sees Taiwan as part of China, despite never having controlled it. Lai has been a staunch defender of Taiwan's self-governing status.
I will act in accordance with our democratic and free constitutional order in a manner that is balanced and maintains the status quo. At the same time, we're also determined to safeguard Taiwan from continuing threats and intimidation from China.
An expert said that by choosing Lai, the people of Taiwan hope to keep the status quo and reject Beijing's rule.
They do not embrace a simplistic binary view of war and peace and aspire to forge their own path. Ultimately, we don't necessarily have to see Taiwan as being sandwiched between the United States and China in their competition.
An expert said that by choosing Lai, the people of Taiwan hope to keep the status quo and reject Beijing's rule.
They do not embrace a simplistic binary view of war and peace and aspire to forge their own path. Ultimately, we don't necessarily have to see Taiwan as being sandwiched between the United States and China in their competition.
Lai won 40% of the vote, Hou Yu-yi from the main opposition party taking 33%. Third-party candidate Ko Wen-je won 26%.
We may be sad, but we must not be discouraged. We must transform the power of indignation into the forces of supervision over the Democratic Progressive Party.
His victory marks the first time ever that a political party in Taiwan gets to stay in power after 2 terms. Lai will be sworn in this May, succeeding current President Tsai Ing-wen. During his campaign, Lai pledged to work closely with the U.S. and bolster Taiwan's defenses. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken congratulated William Lai on his victory, writing on X that the U.S. also congratulates the Taiwanese people for participating in free and fair elections and demonstrating the strength of their democratic system.
Beijing responded quickly to William Lai's win, claiming the victory doesn't represent the island's mainstream public opinion because Taiwan is part of China. Russia's foreign ministry is also chiming in, its spokeswoman saying Moscow will continue to view Taiwan as an integral part of China. Worth noting, the Chinese Communist Party has never ruled Taiwan. Besides the brief statement, a South China Morning Post tally shows no rise in aircraft incursions near the island in the 3 months leading up to Saturday's vote. Beyond the presidential post, Taiwanese voters also cast their ballots to decide seats in the island's legislature. Here's the breakdown. President-elect William Lai's party, the DPP, lost 10 seats for a total of 51, while the KMT picked up 15, now holding 52. No party won the majority, so when Lai is sworn in as the president, he will face the challenges of a divided government. That's unless his party can form a coalition with Ko's Taiwan People's Party. This third party just won 8 seats, making them a key swing vote in the legislature. Similar to the U.S. Congress, the legislature holds the power to amend Taiwan's constitution, declare war or peace, pardon people, impeach the president or vice president, or change Taiwan's territorial boundaries. It also has a built-in checks and balances system over executive orders. And like the U.S. Senate, it must approve positions appointed by Taiwan's president.
On the legislative elections, the DPP did not hold on to a majority. I will carefully study the policies and positions of my 2 electoral opponents. As long as they bring benefit to the people and further our national development, they will be incorporated into my policy framework.
The only free elections in the Chinese-speaking world have come to an end. From under the shadows of threats and alleged interference by the Chinese Communist Party, Taiwan ushers in a new president known China Hawk. As we anticipate China's response and evaluate the rising risk of an invasion, we also delve into the questions of whether the U.S. can glean valuable insight from Taiwan's electoral journey. Joining us now to discuss is Joshua Phillip, senior investigative journalist at the Epoch Times. Would the Taiwan-China relationship be different after this election?
Well, they're saying they'll keep the doors open. Keep in mind that the current president of Taiwan, again, not the one just elected, keep in mind that William Lai is the vice president currently, now going into the seat of the presidency. It's the same administration, basically, just a new vice president. The big difference now is that, Xi Jinping has made more of a red line. Xi Jinping has taken more of a hard stance on Taiwan and Taiwan independence and the whole narrative. He even tried getting Biden to adopt the CCP's agenda over Taiwan. Biden refused to go along with Xi. And so, very likely we are going to see things shift a little bit, just not because of Taiwan. Taiwan's trying to keep the door open, but because the Chinese Communist Party is becoming significantly more hostile.
Is the risk of China's invasion in Taiwan increasing now?
If that does happen, there are 3 different possible scenarios. One is direct invasion. That would be devastating for the Chinese Communist Party, mainly because of the way that Taiwan Strait is set up, and mainly also because Taiwan, in terms of geology, is one of the most defensive areas probably in the world. It'd be very hard for them to do it. The other possibility is a blockade. If the CCP were to surround the island, deny entrance or people leaving, cut them off and do it like an old school castle siege. The other possibility is what they call the 5th column, and that would be Chinese sleeper agents within Taiwan activating and then carrying out, what looks like a revolution locally on the ground. More than likely, what I've been talking about with experts here is it'd be a combination of all 3. If the Chinese Communist Party were to attack Taiwan, very likely they would make a blockade. They would use the 5th column to launch internal attacks, and then during the chaos of that, only then have the invasion force come. The issue with all that, though, is that it would create a window of time for foreign response. Japan has said, at the very least, they've suggested that Taiwan is also in the strategic interest of Japan, because a war for Taiwan would very likely include their, region as well. They would intervene. Possibility of Philippines intervening, and because Japan is, of course, allied with the United States in the, the defensive agreement between India, Japan, the U.S., and Australia, that would very quickly draw on the rest of the countries. India, especially having, of course, ground war access to China, would present a real problem. And so, as long as the U.S. stands by Taiwan, even with the U.S. is getting pulled into multiple wars, this could still be far too risky for the CCP. But, again, they're saying it, so we'll see.
Josh, you mentioned earlier that China tried very hard to intervene with the election. I just want to mention that in Taiwan's elections, voters are required to personally go to designated polling stations and use paper ballots. Taiwan doesn't allow absentee, early proxy, or electronic voting. The ballots are counted by designated individuals, and each ballot is displayed before counting for public supervision. I just wonder, is there something that the U.S. can learn from Taiwan's elections?
I'd say without a doubt. I actually went to a couple of the stations where they were counting the votes in Taiwan. As an American, I was impressed by the transparency of the Taiwan election process. You know, you go in there, it's totally open. You can watch them counting the ballots. You have multiple checks and balances. They hold up every single ballot for you to see. You're close enough where you can read it. They have police there watching, making sure there's no funny business. Again, several people, checks and balances, as you mentioned, all the other forms they have of ensuring it's very hard to interfere with. And again, the Chinese Communist Party tried everything to interfere with the election here. All they could do was do things with bribes, threats, trying to pressure the businesses, all that stuff, and also on the ideological level. But it was not enough. It wasn't enough. And so, yeah, if American leaders are afraid of foreign interference in our elections, look at Taiwan, because they're a model now of resisting the CCP's attempts to interfere with an election.
Taiwan's ruling party secures a record third term on Saturday. That's as Vice President William Lai won the island's high-profile presidential election with over 40% of the vote. The new president-elect has been known for his staunch defense of the island's sovereignty, something Beijing considers a red line. The new president-elect has been in politics for decades. Throughout his career, Lai has become known for his outspoken rhetoric. He was once considered even tougher against China than President Tsai Ing-wen, who he served with as vice president. In his speech last year, he insisted that Taiwan is already independent. Therefore, there is no need to declare it.
The pragmatic acceptance is that Taiwan is already a sovereign, independent country, and there is no need to separately declare Taiwan independence. Taiwan and China are not subordinate to each other, and only Taiwan's 23 million people can decide their future.
That view draws anger from China. Back in August, Beijing called him a, quote, troublemaker. That's in response to his brief but official stop in the U.S. on his way to Paraguay. The South American nation is one of only 13 countries that still maintains formal ties with Taiwan. Taipei threw the remark back at Beijing, responding that China is the real troublemaker, pointing to its standoff this month with the Philippines and its continued military harassment of Taiwan. Although known for his hawkish attitude towards China, Lai appears to be taking a more subtle approach since starting his election preparation. Just days ago, Lai pledged that he would keep Taiwan's status quo if he was elected.
We should strengthen our own strength and unite and cooperate to ensure peace.
Lai pledged during his campaign that he'll stick to President Tsai's path. That means staying open to the possibility of talks with China and maintaining peace and the status quo. At the same time, pledging to defend the island and reiterating that only its people can decide Taiwan's future. Here's a look at her stance at an earlier campaign rally for Lai.
I want to ask you all here, does anyone want war? Nobody wants war. Do we want peace? Everyone wants peace. Look at Hong Kong and think of Taiwan. We don't want Hong Kong-style peace. We want dignified peace. Everyone, am I right?
Beijing enacted a national security law on the city of Hong Kong in 2020. Since then, critics have pointed to a fast-paced erosion of democratic freedoms in the former British colony. That's despite the promise of Hong Kong's autonomy for at least 50 years under a one-country, two-systems framework. When it was handed back to Chinese rule in 1997, China made the same offer to Taiwan, but the island staunchly denies Chinese sovereignty. Taiwan's foreign minister has said the island has kept a close eye on Beijing's attempts to sway the election. Last week, he revealed the ministry would publish its findings soon after voting day. Ahead of that report, here's a look back on the Chinese Communist Party's alleged influence efforts. So how does the self-governed island protect its elections? The answer? Vote in person. Prior to the election, registered voters will receive a notice telling them where to cast their ballots within their own district. In Taiwan, each person carries a special stamp that is unique to themselves, just like a social security number. Those who forget to bring it to the poll sites can replace it with a signature or a fingerprint. Unlike the United States, there are no mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, proxy voting, or electronic voting. And all ballots are counted by hand. The process is open to the public. Coming up, a crucial question echoing in Taipei and Washington. Could the election results lead to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan? We bring exclusive insights. How will Taiwan's president-elect influence the island's relations with the U.S. and China? A look at his past stances. And from geopolitics to international trade, just how important is Taiwan to the U.S. and the world? We'll break down some of the island's most vital roles on the global stage. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. A big question buzzing in both Taipei and Washington. Could the election results lead to China's invasion of Taiwan? Just one day before the pivotal election, Beijing vowed to crush any efforts to promote Taiwan's independence, while China's defense ministry said the Chinese military maintains high vigilance at all times. So a formal declaration of independence would likely trigger an all-out war. In his New Year's message, Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping hinted at imminent action, calling the reunification of Taiwan and China, quote, inevitable. That threat is very real. CIA Director William Burns warned last year that Xi had ordered his military to be ready by 2027 to annex Taiwan. In 2023 alone, Taiwan reported over 1,700 Chinese warplanes entering its air defense identification zone. This is a 76% increase from 2021. So far, these acts have fallen short of an invasion and remained in the gray zone. But the island's leaders are taking no chances and are seeking to arm its military to the teeth. Last year, Taiwan bought more than $1.5 billion worth of arms and services from the U.S. They also have plans to send troops over to the U.S. for training. Taiwan is also fending off Chinese state-sponsored attacks on its cyber infrastructure. According to cybersecurity firm Fortinet, Taiwan had 80% more cyber attacks in the first half of 2023, the most in the Asia-Pacific region. Taiwan's deputy digital minister described a doomsday scenario, noting that for Taiwan, quote, all communication with the outside world relies on undersea cables. The worst case is all our undersea cables are cut off. Officials are now looking to foreign satellite services for support. An actual war comes at high costs. A Bloomberg report puts the estimate at $10 trillion. That would include possible U.S. sanctions and tariffs against China. Beijing labeled the election as a choice between peace and war and warned that William Lai's victory would spark cross-strait conflict. But given China's current economic woes and Xi's recent purge of the military, the CCP will surely be cautious in moving against Taiwan. How will Taiwan's new president impact the island's relations with the U.S.? It seems the ties would only get stronger. William Lai's Democratic Progressive Party is pro-America, and they have bolstered ties with the U.S. during the past years, with both the Trump and the Biden administrations. And here's a look at Lai's actions before the election. About 6 months before Election Day, Lai published an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal. He listed his plans to preserve peace in the Taiwan Strait. Topping his list is bolstering Taiwan's defenses. That's where Washington fits in. The U.S. is bound by law to sell weapons to Taiwan so it can defend itself. Last year, the Biden administration approved $500 million in arms sales to Taiwan. Soon after, Lai said at a campaign event that when Taiwan's president can enter the White House, the political goal that we're pursuing will have been achieved. The remark surprised many because the U.S. doesn't allow top Taiwanese officials to visit Washington, D.C. The U.S. recognizes the communist regime in Beijing as China's ruling power. On the Taiwan issue, the U.S. acknowledges Beijing's view that Taiwan is part of China, but doesn't endorse it. A month after publishing the op-ed, Lai made stopovers in New York and San Francisco on his way to and back from Paraguay.
未来我会竭尽所能，以和平作为灯塔。
In the future, I will do my best to take peace as a beacon, use democracy as a compass, and lead Taiwan to move forward.
Beijing called him a troublemaker through and through. Lai's running mate, Xiaobi Kim, also has close ties to the U.S. She's half American and spent most of her youth in the U.S. Xiao is a seasoned diplomat. She served as Taiwan's de facto ambassador to the U.S. for the past 3 years. How important is Taiwan to the U.S. and the world? Here's a look at some of the island's most vital roles on the global stage economically and politically. In 2022, Taiwan became the 13th largest exporter to the U.S. market, with a staggering $44.5 billion in outbound trade. One key item, semiconductors. The island produces over 90% of the world's cutting-edge chips, and a significant portion of them are sold to U.S. firms. Microchips are found in virtually all modern electronics, ranging from smartphones, laptops, cars, and home appliances to missiles and fighter jets. On the geopolitical front, the Taiwan Strait is a vital shipping lane to the global supply chain. This waterway connects China, Japan, the U.S., and Europe. Roughly 44% of the world's cargo ships passed through the region in 2022. A recent Bloomberg study estimates that a war over Taiwan could cost roughly $10 trillion, a much bigger price tag than the war in Ukraine or the COVID-19 pandemic. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Don Ma. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you would like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. See you soon.